Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into a really fascinating piece of source material today called The Vital Design of Earth's Atmosphere. Have you ever just looked up at the sky and wondered how our planet actually got its life-sustaining atmosphere? We're breathing it in every single second, literally right now, but we rarely stop to think about the incredible mechanics that keep it all perfectly balanced. The text we're unpacking today takes a deep dive into this exact cosmic mystery. It explores the fragile layers protecting us, and, as you'll see, it proposes a pretty provocative conclusion about how the whole shebang got here in the first place.
This source jumps right into the deep end, asking one very direct question. How did the Earth's skin come into being? Because the author doesn't just want to list off what the atmosphere is made of, right? They want to figure out why it's there at all. It sets up these massive stakes right from the jump, really challenging us to think about whether our atmosphere is just some random natural accident, or maybe something much more deliberate.
To ground this whole argument, the author draws a really stark contrast. Just think about our celestial neighbors for a second, like the Moon or Mars. The text points out that they are completely desolate, bleak, and totally lifeless, all because they lack a crucial outer layer. But then, you look at Earth. It's vibrant, it's blue, it is absolutely teeming with life. And the source affectionately calls this protective layer the skin of the Earth. Without this vital skin, the author argues, our planet would basically be indistinguishable from a lifeless rock like Mars.
So here's where it gets kind of wild. The author makes a crucial point about just how incredibly thin and fragile this skin actually is. We're talking a mere 40 kilometers. Now, the atmosphere as a whole stretches way up to about 1,000 kilometers above sea level, sure, but the text notes that an astounding 99% of it is concentrated within just those first 40 kilometers from the surface. When you think about the massive, mind-boggling size of the Earth, a 40-kilometer barrier is, well, it's an incredibly thin, fragile little shell keeping us alive against the total vacuum of space.
The author actually breaks this skin down into 5 very distinct layers: the troposphere, the stratosphere, the mesosphere, the ionosphere, and the exosphere. And what's super fascinating here is how the text categorizes them. You see, these aren't just arbitrary lines drawn in the sky. The author explains they're strictly divided up based on the wildly different chemical components you find at those specific altitude ranges.
Let's zoom in on that very first layer, though, the troposphere. The text highlights this one specifically. This is just the first 18 kilometers above sea level. And the source drops a really fascinating statistic here. 99% of all the atmosphere's water vapor is trapped right inside this layer. Think about what that actually means. Every single weather event you have ever experienced in your entire life, giant thunderstorms, drifting clouds, morning mist, rainbows, all of it happens right here in this one incredibly thin, concentrated band hovering just above our heads.
Which brings us to the next part of the source material, the perfect gas recipe.
So shifting from the physical structure over to the actual chemical makeup, let's map out what the author describes as this incredibly precise Goldilocks recipe. Our atmosphere is made up of exactly 78% nitrogen, exactly 21% oxygen, and just 1% of other gases, trace elements like carbon dioxide, argon, and ozone. The text really sets up this argument that this specific gaseous blend is flawlessly balanced to allow life to exist. It looks pretty simple on the surface, right?
Well, hold on, because here's the author's stark warning about those exact percentages. The text explicitly states, any increase or decrease in these proportions would be catastrophic to life. The author's arguing that this specific ratio isn't just highly favorable for us, it's strictly mandatory. Even a tiny, minor deviation in these gas levels would basically spell immediate doom for the entire planet. Let's look at exactly how the source breaks down the frankly terrifying consequences of tweaking this recipe.
Just consider the razor's edge the author describes when it comes to that 21% oxygen level. If we have too little oxygen, well, the text says that means instant death for humans and animals. Even a slight drop makes normal activity near impossible. The author points to climbers struggling to take a single step on Mount Everest just because the oxygen is scarce. Okay, but what if oxygen is more than 21%? The text argues that people and animals in low-latitude regions would literally suffer from oxygen poisoning. And even crazier, highly flammable materials in nature would become wildly unstable. We're talking spontaneous combustion, where one tiny spark could trigger global infernos. Next up is nitrogen, making up a massive 78% of the atmosphere. Now, the author points out that plants rely heavily on nitrogen oxide to grow, and the text explains this truly fascinating natural mechanism to get it to them. Violent lightning in the atmosphere strikes and actually converts this exact 78% nitrogen base into the essential oxides that surface plants desperately need. The author asserts that if the nitrogen content was anything less than 78%, it simply wouldn't matter how much thunder and lightning we had. There just wouldn't be enough nitrogen oxide created, and the plants on Earth's surface would literally starve to death.
And then, of course, we have carbon dioxide, sitting at less than 1%. The source explains that this tiny, almost microscopic fraction is the absolute core factor of the greenhouse effect. It's magically maintaining global temperatures right between a livable -21 and +14 degrees Celsius. Without this precise trace amount of CO2, the text states our oceans would just completely freeze over into solid ice, and plants would die out entirely. But flip that around. With just a fraction too much CO2, humans and animals would suffer poisoning, and global temperatures would shoot up to absolutely lethal levels.
Which brings us to the final section, the source's conclusion. A managed universe?
So up to this point, the text has been super focused on scientific data, right? We're talking precise percentages, altitudes, severe chemical reactions, but right here is where the author shifts into a highly philosophical argument. They pose this central rhetorical question: can we always attribute inexplicable phenomena to simply being naturally formed as a matter of course? Given the incredibly precise, honestly terrifying fragility of the atmospheric balance we just unpacked, the author is directly asking you to consider, could this absolute perfection truly just happen by natural chance?
To really drive this argument home, the author uses a bunch of everyday analogies to show that complex systems always require outside intervention. For instance, can a baby grow up safely without the careful attention of parents? Is the electrical lighting in our homes generated naturally? Or think about a farm. Can you naturally reap a massive harvest just by tossing some seeds on the ground, without ever weeding, fertilizing, or watering them? The author's implied answer to all of these everyday scenarios is a resounding no way.
But the author's strongest analogy focuses on aviation. They ask, does a plane weighing dozens of tons fly naturally in the sky? By pointing to these heavy, complex mechanics, the text strongly asserts that highly coordinated, functioning systems are undeniably designed and managed. They're never accidental. The atmosphere, the author implies, is exactly like that massive airplane. It's an impossibly complex mechanism that absolutely cannot exist without deliberate intent and management.
And that leads us directly into the source's final super provocative thesis. Quote, in the universe, there is absolutely nothing that happens naturally or spontaneously. Everything is managed by a person or intelligence. The author asks if anyone can still doubt this, really leaving no room for ambiguity. Their conclusion is that our vital skin, the atmosphere, is the undeniable result of intelligent design. So whether you view our atmosphere as a profoundly lucky cosmic accident, or the deliberate work of an intelligent manager like this text fiercely argues, the precise balance of Earth's skin remains a deeply captivating mystery. So having seen the fragile numbers that keep us alive, what do you think is really keeping our planet breathing?